This video might be the difference between you landing a $150,000 job in investment banking and putting you on the path to earning millions, or sending applications into the void and watching others take the offer from your dream bank that could have been yours. I led JP Morgan UC Berkeley recruiting for 2 years while at the firm, and the number one question I get asked from candidates is how to network with bankers. And if you spend these next 10 minutes with me and learn my step-by-step playbook for networking, you'll learn exactly how to strategically and effectively build relationships with bankers that will lead to interviews, offers, and your dream career. Also, be sure to check out the link below for a free networking tracker I'm going to be going throughout this video, and subscribe for future videos for more recruiting tips and resources. All right, with that said, let's go into step number 1, which is building your master list. And you want to do this in a networking tracker and compile a list of people working at the firms you want to work at. And my most important tip is to go from hot to cold. What I mean by this is that you want to reach out to your hottest leads first. This is your friends, family, and people you know, and then alumni from your school, especially if they are a part of the club you are a part of. And then only after completely exhausting all the people in your network, then start cold emailing and messaging people first that you have a similarity to, which can be as simple as being the same ethnicity or having interned at the same company in the past. Only after that do you start spraying and praying, reaching out to everyone else you can. For these cold emails, I recommend using tools like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Find Email, which will help you find emails. Or for a free option, you can Google firm name email format, and you'll usually find something like the most common Evercore email format is first.last@evercore.com. So if the banker's name is Jane Doe, her email is probably jane.doe@evercore.com. Lastly, another super powerful tool I use is called Dex, which automatically aggregates all your contacts from LinkedIn, your phone, email, and more. After inputting your contacts, you can easily search through for people who work at banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan, and group them into different categories, which is super helpful for recruiting. You can also search for any of your contacts in the search bar or by specific keywords, and also go to a world map to see where the bankers you know are, so you can speak to the ones at the offices you're interested in working at. There's also a Dex plugin that allows you to easily add people on LinkedIn, set reminders on when to reach out, add them to a group, and also there's an AI feature that helps you generate messages on LinkedIn to save you time. Dex can be a super helpful tool when you're recruiting and networking, and you can check them out using my link down in the description below. Going into our next step, reaching out, this is where a lot of candidates mess up, and I have a lot of tips for this. First, given that people working at the top banks get literally hundreds of requests, you need to do your research on each person you reach out to by checking their LinkedIn and personalizing your message to them with something specific about their background or some similarity that you share with them. Remember that bankers are working 80 to 100-hour weeks, so if you don't write them a good personalized email, you're very unlikely to get a good response, and you always need to be working harder than your competition since many just send generic messages that'll simply get deleted. Second, keep your messages short, concise, and respectful. No longer than 5 to 7 sentences, and to maximize your chances of a reply, only ask for 15 minutes, especially if it's a cold outreach, and if the conversation goes well, you'll likely be talking for 30 minutes. Third, you should always attach your resume for reference, but first ensure that it's banker friendly, which you can learn more about in this video here. Last but not least, if the banker agrees to a chat on Zoom or Google Meet, always offer to send a calendar invite with a link so it saves them some time. The next step is to send a confirmation email the day before your meeting, which is an often overlooked step by most candidates, but it's important to do this for 2 reasons. First, it reminds the banker who is extremely busy about the call and avoids you also wasting time in case they need to move the call, or sometimes bankers get so busy that they forget and don't even show up. Second, it shows the banker that you are on the top of your game, and while it won't completely move the needle, every little good impression you can make to bankers work in your favor, and banking recruiting is often a game of inches. My rule is that if you schedule a call any more than 2 days into the future, you should send a confirmation email the day before. The next step we're going to discuss is really at the crux of networking, because the number one mistake candidates make is that they've done all this good work of reaching out to 50 plus bankers, and after finally getting one on the phone, they fail to make a good impression and the banker actually axes you from the recruiting process. First of all, it's very, very important that you don't just make the chat a Q&A session where you're going through a roster of questions you prepared, and also you never ever want to ask questions you can already find online. Banking is a unique industry in which bankers work 80 to 100-hour weeks, so put yourself in their shoes. Would you want to spend 30 minutes with someone who's asking very boring cookie-cutter Q&A questions when every single hour of your free time is precious? That's why the number one most important goal when speaking with a banker is to leave the impression that they could see themselves in the cubicle next to yours late into the night, turning comments for a pitch book, and you guys are enjoying each other's company. As a result, I always recommend something a bit counterintuitive to candidates, which is that you should aim to spend anywhere between 50 to 80% of the conversation getting to know the banker as a person rather than really learning about the role or bank. For example, when I was recruiting for JP Morgan, I remember speaking with one associate about tennis for 15 minutes, one analyst about basketball for most of our chat, and with a VP about their kids for about half the call. I have 3 important tips on how to do this. First, at the start of the conversation, don't go straight into intros, but keep things casual and ask if they did anything fun over the weekend, or talk about a big recent event like the NBA playoffs or a trending news story. Second, when exchanging intros, pay close attention to their background and think about what you find interesting, whether it's that they went to business school or grew up in Kentucky or was a Navy SEAL before banking, which by the way, one of my coworkers was. You can start the conversation with either of these 2 methods, but the most important tip is that conversations are all about follow-up questions, and you want to envision what is being said kind of stacked upon each other. For example, if you're speaking with a banker who says he went to Duke and played basketball, you could ask, are you following the NBA playoffs? And then, who's your favorite team? And then, I know you don't have much time in banking, but are you still able to make time to play? At which point, he may provide some insight into the group's culture and how the group has a league that plays every Tuesday. And this is pretty much a conversation that I had with one of the bankers when I was recruiting for JP Morgan. I can assure you that these kinds of conversations will allow you to leave a much more favorable impression on the banker than trying to sound smart and asking a question like, how have the recent tariffs, interest rates, or inflation affected the group's deal flow? Or cookie cutter questions like, what's your favorite deal that you worked on? With all this said, you do need to learn more about the job, so it is important to learn about the bank and group's culture, but ideally through the natural flow of the conversation, as opposed to just going through a list of Q&A. If you are able to have conversations like these, trust me that when you eventually ask to be referred to another banker, they will be responding to you right away rather than having this connection flaming out into a dead end. Believe it or not, there's still a ton I haven't yet covered about networking, and if you want even more advice and are interested in breaking into banking, for the first time and only time this year, I'm hosting a 3-day live event from May 29th to 31st. The point of this event is to help you learn exactly what bankers look for, how you can become a memorable candidate, and how you can crush your behaviorals and technicals to secure job offers. And I'll also be having a banker from a top bank joining us to show you exactly what the banking recruiting process looks like from the inside in 2025. I wanted to make this event super affordable, and it'll only cost you $27, which comes out to $9 a day. And I'm so certain the event will be worth it for you that I have a 100% money back guarantee. And if you're interested, feel free to check out the description below to secure your spot. The next part of the process is the all-important thank you email, which you should be sending within 24 hours, either later that night or the next morning after your conversation. This again is another way to build your relationship with the banker and leave a good impression, and all you need to do is write a few sentences about what you enjoyed speaking with them about. Most importantly though, if the conversation has gone well, it also gives you an opportunity to ask to speak with another banker, and if the banker does agree, this means that networking is going super well and you're on your way to building a reputation at that bank and on the path to receiving an interview. The last step is the cherry on top, which is staying in touch. If you've already received a referral to another banker, then you probably have gotten about 80% of what you can for that recruiting season. But bankers always appreciate follow-up emails when you move forward in the recruiting process. This means that if you received an interview or moved on to the Super Day, send them a short update about your progress, and sometimes they may even provide you some tips. Even if you didn't move forward, keeping bankers updated builds the relationship, leaving the door open for future recruiting cycles when you may need their help again, which they certainly can be open to, especially if you built more experience by working at a different bank. Alright, so that covers my best tips for networking for banking recruiting. Hope you guys all learned a lot. Let me know if you guys have any more questions about networking down in the comments below. Also check out the description for a free application tracker that I highly recommend using. And in the next screen, you're going to see a video about everything I learned at JP Morgan. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. As always, thank you guys for watching and hope to catch you all in the next video.